The Lilies of the Field by William E. Barrett. Chapter 4. Norfolk had a population of 7,094 people, which made it the metropolis of the West Slope where towns were small and widely spaced. It was a spread-out town, and the Livingston Construction Company was on the northern outskirts. Mother Maria Martha was accompanied by Sister Gertrude. The two nuns left Homer Smith beside the station wagon while they entered the Livingston office. Homer lighted a cigarette and looked at the construction company property with interest. He had no idea why Old Mother was visiting this place, but it had a prosperous look. Politician, this man Livingston, he decided. There were several earth-moving machines standing in a row and spaces indicating that there were others out on a job. There were 4 good-sized buildings and an adjoining lumberyard, all of which, on this side of the mountain, added up to road building contracts and government work. A man didn't employ such equipment out in the wide open spaces by merely hanging out a sign or putting an ad in the paper. Rolling in it, Homer thought. This man is doing all right. He was idly curious about Mother Maria Martha's mission, but speculation never engaged his mind for long. He either knew something or he didn't know, found out ultimately or never found out. He walked around admiring the equipment. He had resumed his post beside the station wagon when a short, firm-jawed, gray-haired man exited briskly from the office door. The man seemed angry, either temporarily or permanently so. He looked at Homer challengingly, looked past him, then met his eyes. "Are you Schmidt?" he said incredulously. "That's a German idea," Homer said softly. "My folks figured that it was Smith. Named me Homer." "You're the man who is going to build a chapel for those nuns?" Homer was about to say that was another German idea, one of Old Mother's ideas, but he didn't like the man's attitude. The man didn't seek information in a polite and orderly way. "Yes," he said. "I expected a different type. Hell, you'll never do it." Homer kept his eyes on the other man's face, not answering, merely waiting. This was an attitude that he understood, although he had not encountered it lately. This man expected to meet somebody white. When he discovered that he was dealing with a Negro, he knew that the job wouldn't be done. A voice inside Homer said, "The man's right. You know he's right. You won't do it." He closed the voice out, refusing to listen. "I'm Orville Livingston," the man said. "I don't know how you got mixed up in this, but I told this nun when she first came here that she'd better go back again. I was Gus Ritter's friend and the executor of his estate. I turned his property over to this religious order, which was what he wanted. I sold land for those nuns after they came here without taking a commission. I had a man plow for them when they insisted on working the land that they kept, and I paid him personally. Now they want bricks. I've got to stop somewhere. I'm a Methodist." "I'm a Baptist myself." "You are? Then why are you working for them? If you are." "I haven't figured that out yet." You'll figure it out, and then you'll quit. Those nuns will figure it out too. Figure out that what people told them was right. Then they'll quit. They must. Women can't work that land, and if their church was interested in them, it wouldn't leave them out here. They'll quit, and anything that they start will fall to ruin." "Old Mother has a strong idea in her mind," Homer said softly. "She's going to do what she feels she must." "Certainly. If somebody else supplies the bricks, well, I won't. I wanted to see you before I told her." Orville Livingston did not seem to realize that he had made Homer Smith the last toppling weight in the scales of decision against the nuns, and that he was telling him so. "You've got that right," Homer said. "I can't talk against you on that. I'm still doing that job for them. I'm going to need 2 days' work a week to keep it going. I can handle a bulldozer, almost any machinery you got. Learned how in the Army. All right, I can use you Thursday and Friday if you can only work 2 days. I'll pay the going rate on whatever job you're assigned. 7, Thursday morning. I'll try you out. Orville Livingston turned away. Another thing, Homer said. I'll need 2 sacks of cement. For them, I'll pay cash. $3. I'll have a man wheel them out. Homer lighted another cigarette. Something had happened to him. He didn't plan any part of it. He had taken a job that he didn't want under a man whom he didn't like, and he told the man that he was going to build a church. It didn't make sense. He stared across the big lot of the Livingston Construction Company, seeing none of it, seeking in his mind for a way out of a worrisome situation. A sentence kept repeating itself like an outside voice speaking to him. I expected a different type. Then another sentence. I wanted to see you before I told her. He'd let old Mother down merely by being black. A man wheeled out 2 sacks of cement, and Homer paid for them. They weighed 94 pounds a sack, and he heaved them into the back of the station wagon. His muscles felt good doing it. The 2 nuns emerged from the office, and any sentimental feeling that he had developed for Mother Maria Martha vanished immediately. She was in bad humor. Schmidt, she said curtly, we go back. No, we don't. I've got things to do. His pride stood tall, contradicting her and not explaining anything. The 2 nuns were riding in the front with him because there was no sensible alternative. He could hear the old nun breathing heavily. We have no time, she said. He ignored her and drove downtown. Norfolk had a variety of stores concentrated on 2 streets. He found the town interesting after a period of isolation. He bought a spirit level and a couple of good saws, a heavy hammer, a chisel, and a hoe with a ventilated blade. The expenditure dismayed him, but he assured himself that he would pay the money back to his fund out of his pay on Friday. He couldn't afford a big investment in something that probably wasn't going to get done. Schmidt, Mother Maria Martha said when they were halfway home. We have no bricks. We'll get some. He didn't know where or how, but that was a problem of the future, and the future was never quite real to him. A man couldn't calculate on time that hadn't arrived, happenings that hadn't happened. He had all that he could do in coping with what was already here. The here and the now of this afternoon was the finishing of the foundation clean-out. It took his afternoon and part of the next day. He built a mortar box, got a level on the foundation, chiseled off the rough spots, and mixed cement. He started on the task of smoothing the top of the foundation with cement and worked carefully, missing the direction of a boss while savoring the joy of being his own man with a job that was his to plan and to execute. On Thursday and Friday, he worked in one of the Livingston road gangs, and on Friday night he drew his pay. I owe myself more money than I earned. The flat statement admitted of no argument. It was a fact. He weighed the fact thoughtfully for as long as it took him to walk to the North Fork supermarket. That market had been beckoning to him since he first saw it. He entered and selected a wheeled basket, pushing it before him. He passed all of the products which needed refrigeration, but he selected an accumulation of canned goods and 2 cans of coffee. He hesitated for a long 2 minutes before buying a whole ham. We've got to eat better than we've been eating, he said defensively. When he presented the 2 sacks of groceries to Mother Maria Martha, her face tightened like one of her hands folding into a fist. More bone and skin than flesh, more contraction than expression. He had a startled expression that there were tears in her eyes, but he could not be certain because she turned away so abruptly, the groceries in her arms. Ach, Schmidt, she said. The next day she was more annoying than ever, yelling "Schmidt" at him when he was counseling with himself over his work, bothering his life with orders and suggestions and just plain interference. He decided that she was a natural henpecker and that he'd been foolish in his idea that she had softness in her. "Hard as a hammer," he muttered, "always beating on something." He had, however, established a new pattern without thinking about it. Buying groceries seemed the natural thing to do when he had his second payday a week later, and he engaged in no hesitations or arguments with himself. "Mouths to feed," he said. He rather liked the idea, liked the nuns, and responded warmly to their obvious liking for himself. He enjoyed the English lessons and the Sunday music. Everything in his life seemed to fall into line. Work and more work, music, a little visiting, a little pondering, regular things to do at regular hours, and no time to think about doing anything else. The nuns worked all day in the fields as the weather grew warmer. He neither tried to understand their work nor to interfere with it. They were irrigating the land from a stream which fed into another puny stream that Westerners called a river. All that he knew about the irrigating process was that it was hard work. He had grown up in Columbia, South Carolina, and he was strictly city. The idea of building a church obsessed him. He had no bricks, but he laid floor when he had the foundation topped with cement. He used common lumber for his subfloor and the best of his planks from the lumber pile for the surface. Someday, he thought, we'll maybe have some money for linoleum or something. These planks won't take no polish. He studied the church in Piedras every Sunday. There was not much to learn from it, but one feature of his own dream church baffled him. The brick chimney, which had survived the fire, stood high against the sky, higher than his projected roof. The fireplace and part of the stone mantel had survived too, and that fireplace would be halfway down the right-hand side aisle of his church. He had never seen a church with a fireplace, nor one with a chimney. That is, not a big chimney that called attention to itself. Old Mother will probably have someone lay a log and sit herself in that warm spot come cold weather, he thought. He tried to take it lightly, but the chimney wasn't right. The church in Piedras had only a small hole near the altar side where a stovepipe could fit in winter, and it was a larger structure than his church. He could wreck the chimney, of course, but that old German, Gus Ritter, had built things to last. It would be difficult to get that chimney out of there with the equipment that he had. He did not like destroying something that had survived a disaster. That didn't seem right either. On a Tuesday in late July, the sad-faced man who ran the cafe in Piedras drove a beer truck up the road and parked behind the station wagon. He had another man with him, and neither man was friendly. "The padre says to the people that you must have brick." There were about 500 adobe bricks in the truck, and the two men made only a pretense of helping to unload it. Homer unloaded 5 bricks to their 1. "It is of no use," the sad-faced man said, "but we have brought it." "Thanks." Homer did not waste time talking to people who did not want to talk to him. He understood dimly the attitude of these people. It was the attitude of Orville Livingston. They saw no future for the nuns, and they did not want to encourage what they did not approve. They did not want to be involved or called upon for a succession of services either. Brick gave Homer a new impetus. He puddled adobe to use as mortar, and he set his guidelines. He had done a little bricklaying, but not much of it. This adobe brick was tricky. The bricks were uneven in size and crude. He had to socket his floor joists, and he built a temporary wooden bracing for his wall. He experimented and he worked slowly, but with the brick, the thing that he was creating became a reality. He was leading 3 lives: the life of work in North Fork, the communal life of eating and singing with the nuns, the highly personal life of building a church. Mother Maria Martha was a grimly irritating figure with her eternal Schmidt and her interference, but most of the time he could block her out of his mind. When she annoyed him to the point where he could not block her out, he had spells of dark brooding during which he wondered why he was working harder than he had ever worked in his life, and for no pay. Why was he staying here on this sun-baked prairie with so much world yet to see? It was a dull wonder, requiring no answer from him. The answer was before him. He was building a church. He ran out of brick, and on a Monday night of full moon, life caught up with him. It had been blazing, relentlessly hot for days, and there was no moisture. Everything that he touched was hot, and his clothing clung to his skin. Yet this was not a sweating heat like the heat of the South. It was like a frying heat that skilleted a man, making his skin itch. There was a restlessness in his blood and in his nerves, a vague unhappiness clouding his thought. He sat with his back against the left rear wheel of his station wagon and picked listlessly on his guitar. In the distance, a coyote howled. The cry was a high-pitched keening, a sound that climbed to a peak and broke. Homer lifted his head. The silver white of the moon lay over everything like snow. He felt along the strings for that coyote cry. He knew that he wouldn't find it, but he understood it. He had heard coyotes before, almost every night. He was sensitive to animal tongue. He knew when a coyote was seeking a woman of his own kind. This coyote was not seeking that. He was finding the night unbearable because it was so big and so bright. He was lonely in it, feeling small and lost. The cry rose again, and another coyote answered. The other coyote was lonely too, but the coyotes were not lonely for each other. It was bigger than that. Homer fingered the string on his guitar, then laid it down. He couldn't say what they were saying. He could only feel it. He straightened his body and stood, looking to the west where the coyotes were. There was nothing out there, nothing but wide, flat land and miserable little places like Piedras. He turned his body slowly so that he was facing east. The mountains were a deep violet color slashed with silver. Everything was still. The hush had swallowed the last cry of the coyote and frightened him into joining the silence. Homer stretched his arms wide. "Time to go," he said. He returned his guitar to its case and climbed into the front seat of the station wagon. The noisy roar of the engine responding to the starter shattered the night, but there was an urgency in Homer Smith that ignored sound and silence now. He drove down the rutted road to the main highway, and as the car picked up speed, he relaxed under the wheel. Over the pass beyond the mountains lay the big city of the state. It had been a long time, too long a time. He could not tolerate nights so vast as this. He needed a city where people huddled together and kept one another warm. He sang softly as he drove, and his car was a spinning reel on which the road wound up.